What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Today, exciting guest John Mark is going to be joining us. He's a missionary. He lives out in Kona, Hawaii. He's been traveling all across the world, but he is doing something amazing where he's raising $110,000 to set 43 families free from slavery. And his Instagram has just been popping off, millions of views on just what he's aiming to do out there in partnership with some other missionaries. So we want to check out some of that, and then we're going to invite him on right after this. Wow. We could all help. Yeah, they're waiting on us. So good. And then there's 4 million, I think, slaves in Pakistan. So they're raising, this is just for the first 43 families, and there's a few ministries that do this, but this is what we want to highlight today. So without further ado, let us bring in John Mark into the podcast. Tell me about, just kind of before we get into like some of the realities of Pakistan, but just maybe quickly how you kind of fell into or got called into missions, or whatever that moment was like for you.
Yeah, my personal story is actually pretty dramatic. So my grandpa started a missions organization. My dad has worked in missions his whole life, and I never wanted to. And I was in school thinking about going to medical school, becoming a doctor. And I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, that's actually not a good path. My dad sent me to Yemen. I spent 6 weeks there and shadowing doctors and really thinking, okay, I couldn't deny the fact that I liked to travel. I liked nations. And so it all blew up. I decided, okay, I'm not going to go to med school. I don't want that life. And then I was left with kind of, okay, what do I do? And then my uncle, he asked me to come work for his nonprofit, which was a community development organization. So they do stuff like this brick project, I was in Zambia, Haiti, Chile, Uganda, doing all these things with local churches to help serve the extreme poor. I mean, unbelievable organization, but I was 25 living in the suburbs of Chicago at my parents' house. And I was just like, this isn't long-term. This isn't the life that I want. And so I was praying and trying to figure out what to do. And I had a series of dreams, 3 dreams that were really like, you wake up and you're like, wow, that must have been something. Yeah. And the first one, I was looking at our building. The organization is called Bright Hope. And I saw myself walking out of it, or it was a guy walking out of the building, and he had a sweatshirt like this, and it had my name, John Mark, on it. And so I was like, that feels like God is speaking to me. The time to leave Bright Hope is here, and I should, figure out what to do next. But I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out what the right next move was. And then I had a dream that a guy at our office was going to get fired, and then we were going to get sued. So kind of these negative dreams.
Wow.
And sure enough, a month and a half goes by, and that guy gets fired.
At this missions organization, or?
Yeah. Well, this community development organization, Bright Hope. Yeah. The guy gets let go, and I'm like, okay, my dream. This is playing out in real life. And then I had a sense like, okay, maybe these dreams are timing things where I know I'm supposed to leave, but I got to wait for the right time. And then my sisters, both of them did YWAM here in Hawaii. And they both started talking to me and like, John Mark, everything that you say you want, it's out here. You got to come join us. And then I finally one day had this deep peace in my heart. Like, that's exactly the right move. I went home, filled out the application over the weekend. And then Monday I was coming in to tell my uncle that I had to quit. And I was pretty nervous about it. And he comes in, starts going through the mail, and I can hear him, we're all in cubicles. I can hear him across the office. And he goes, "Oh, guys, we're getting sued." And my eyes get so big, and I'm like, no way. And so for whatever reason, I don't know why God chose 2 very negative confirmations, but I just knew. I was like, okay, like that's the timing, that's the thing. And so I joined YWAM back in 2012, and that's where I met Tim. The first like staff training thing that we had together, Tim and I became friends, and he was dreaming about Pakistan back then, and he was just such a cool guy. And then we ended up in different YWAM bases, so we didn't get to work together that long. He was like, you know, one of those guys that you're like, we'll be friends for life. And that kind of led us up to the moment that we were both in Pakistan.
Wow. Okay. And so I haven't met Tim. I've been to the Himalayas twice and met a bunch of them out there, but so he's based there, right?
Yeah. Him and Ashley spent 10 years there with their family. I think they had all 5 of their kids there, maybe.
Wait, Tim isn't one of the guys who did Iqbalo Project, right?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Somebody else. Okay. And then so 10 years or so goes by, and then he sends you a message and you guys, hey, let's go to Pakistan and check this out.
Yeah. So, I mean, I knew his dream about Pakistan, and then he moved to the Himalayas, and I was like, okay, you know, I don't know what he's doing there. But I mean, the reality is he would have had to go to Pakistan by himself versus join a really awesome team that was in the Himalayas.
There's no base in Pakistan, right?
Like YWAM has workers there, but there's not our community, Fire and Fragrance. There's not a community there. And so I think probably, you know, God puts us all on strange development paths. And so I think being there in the Himalayas, working with that team, building a really healthy community was probably all the building blocks that he needed for this season.
Right.
But when did he text me? It was in the fall, I think.
I've seen that Instagram.
Yeah. I was trying to remember when that original message came through. I don't know if it was August or something, but he was like, "Hey, I'm thinking of moving to Pakistan." I'm like, "No way!" All these years later, he goes, "Yeah," and then he kind of described this encounter that he had where he learned about the brick slavery issue, and it just deeply moved him, like tears, weeping, and he's like, I gotta do something about this, and so then he started making trips to Pakistan and investigating and bringing people along, and then found some contacts that were doing discipleship and church planting with the brickyard families, and that's kind of where the dream became a reality.
Wow. Before this I don't know, avenue you've started to go down with Fire and Fragrance, what was your kind of focus? What is your focus with Fire and Fragrance? Like, maybe you have 10 different hats you wear, but
yeah, I do wear a lot of hats. Okay, so, you know, primarily Fire and Fragrance, we train young people to love God and to make God known. So they come to our schools for 3 months. You know, they go through this whole personal transformation, you know, getting healthy, studying the Bible, learning about how to share their faith with others, learning, you know, what it takes to actually transform communities. And then we send them on missions trips around the world. So, you know, all the stuff that's involved in that world, that's primarily what I do. But then, you know, the goal of those schools is to send long-term teams. So, you know, the team that was in the Himalayas, they were all students at one point, and then they got gripped. They're like, man, there's so many people in the mountains that have never even heard of Jesus. Like, let's move there and then take all these trips. We'll be right there. You know, that's what Blake does. He hikes up to remote villages where they've never heard about Jesus, tells them for the first time. And so I've always been focused on that, training young people, helping them find their calling. But there's always been something in me that's, and it probably goes back to my time at Bright Hope, where the extreme poor, you know, people that are in the hardest and darkest situations, I'm kind of like, if we're not going to work on that, like, what are we doing? You know, it's kind of like, I guess you think of when you go to the hospital, they triage patients, and you're like, you have to show attention to the people that are in the most desperate need. And so when movies I've seen, trips I've taken, the slums, people that are in slavery for generations. I'm like, okay, if our if our following Jesus doesn't transform that, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's always been in me. And so when Tim told me about it, I was like, this is the open door that I've been looking for. Because it was actually interesting. I tried for the last several years to take all these trips to Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, and every door shut, 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 shut. And at, after the Taliban took back Afghanistan, I had this really powerful moment with God, and I was just weeping in the office by myself. And I felt God said, if you want to do something about the hardest and darkest, you need to go and sit with the people. And what was really cool about this trip with Tim, it was like the first day we were there, we went and we sat with all these families that had been just gotten free. And I think it was a long day. It was like 8 hours, something like that. And we just sat there and listened to story after story. And I thought back to that memory, and I was like, whoa, I'm in the moment,
Yeah. Okay, I'm really curious now. Like a couple of years ago, I heard about there's a guy in Nashville what's the church there in like Franklin, Tennessee. I forget, but they're really committed to Pakistan and like doing some anti-slavery work. They're like funding, and one of the guys goes over.
I've heard of them. I don't know the name either, though.
Yeah. Anyway, as I was getting into missions, I was just chasing down every contact I could to understand like what is the missions field. I just didn't even know, and that was the first time I heard about some stories of this kind of stuff in Pakistan and modern day slavery. And I would hear, things like the kids don't go to school and like women can be abused and all these kind of things. And then counter to that as well, one thing I saw on one of your Instagrams was like some of these guys, like these brick kiln owners, or I don't know what you call them, are not necessarily bad guys, right? They're just kind of like part of the system. There's just the system there. So I was just kind of curious, what is that? I mean, you were there. What was your perception of that? Like, and maybe there's a variety, right? Like different owners of different.
Yeah. It's a very nuanced discussion. I get a lot of people didn't like that line in my reel. A lot of people fight with me.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, okay. So the day one, we sat with all the families and we heard their side of it. And then day two, we went and sat with the factory owners, and you realize, okay, generationally, just like the families are in slavery, these brick factories are handed down. It's like, my father did this, his father did this. It's like the only business that I know. And, in their perception, this is how it runs, like maybe it's not the best, but these guys are very poor. We're offering them loans ahead of time, and then some of them run away with it. So that they have a way of kind of like being a little bit blind to the injustice of it, for sure. I think, and maybe they don't know what to do, or maybe they actually don't care. It's very possible they were putting on a good face for us.
Yeah.
That's probably part of it. But, you realize, okay, I'm dealing with human beings. Like, these aren't guys with whips and that have no relationship with the people that are in debt bondage. It's not a healthy, it's not a just system or relationships. But it was very eye-opening to hear their perspective and realize, oh, okay, these are guys that need their eyes opened and discipleship, just like the Brick families, and it's easy to want to make like a villain and make a bad guy, but it's not that simple.
So is the way it kind of happens is like, let's say I live in Pakistan, I'm poor, I break my leg, I can't afford to get it done, so I take out a loan from one of these guys, and then they happen to also own a brick farm, and they're like, hey, you can pay off your loan by working for me. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not like an expert in all the situations, but from what I understand is, these are probably, I don't know how much of, if they're urban poor or rural poor, but, yeah, they're all from very low income, extreme poor families, and either they don't have another work opportunity, or some big bill comes to them, whether it's medical or some debt that they have to pay. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like commonly known, oh, if I need an infusion of cash, I can go and kind of sell myself into debt and try to work it off. And the one thing I don't know is, do they know that they're not going to be able to pay it off? I don't know, like, if they're signing the contract knowing how unjust it is.
Right.
But
And what
yeah,
if you like? Okay, so let's say you're raising about $110,000, right?
Yeah.
You're getting pretty close too.
I know, super close. I think it's almost at 80%.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let's say when you get all the money and you go over and you're like, okay, we're going to pay for these slaves to be set free. I guess the slaves, what I'm wondering is, you shoot holes in this, but I'm just mapping it out. So you pay them $110,000, the slave owner. He might be stoked because he gets this huge infusion of cash, right? But then he loses all his workers. So then is he like trying to loan other people money to get other cheap labor, or do some brick kiln owners just go and get legit workers and pay them a better wage, or are they always trying to like get cheap labor from slavery?
Yeah, from what I understand, there's kind of an abundance of people that will take those jobs. And there's different tiers. There are some people that are salaried. If you're the truck driver, or if you have one of the more specialty jobs at the factory, you actually make more of a, I don't know if anybody's making great wages, but
right,
more of a livable wage. The ones that are in the really bad debt bondage are kind of the grunt labor at the very bottom of the process, that are taking the clay, forming it into bricks, and then they hand it off to people that are more specialized, that know how to fire them and transport them and things like that. So yeah, the problem is, if you just go pay their debt, you're kind of, it's good for the families, they get free, but you're kind of perpetuating the cycle. And these families, a lot of them, either they don't have other skilled labor, or they'll run into another medical emergency or finance emergency where they'll have to go back to it. So a lot of people that had gotten free would go back. But, this is kind of commonly known. So now what almost everybody that's doing is, if you're trying to rescue families, they're also providing some sort of a grant and saying, okay, we want to help you start a small business, whether that's a rickshaw. I don't know what the other ones are. But for like,
I've seen like food carts, like food stalls they can take to markets and sell fresh produce. I've seen things like this.
Yeah. And I know that's included in the 110,000 that we're raising, is that it would pay off every family's debt. And then they would have access to a business grant where they could go buy a rickshaw or start one of these businesses. Because some of them, they're going to be like, hey, I got free from this brick thing, I don't want to go back. But what Tim, and this is the whole reason why Tim is taking his approach, he's saying, I don't want to perpetuate that cycle. I actually want to show the whole brick industry that there's a whole new way you can do it. And it's actually better for your business, because you're not going to have people running away. I'm sure, like, managing the people that are in debt bondage, like, it's got to be terrible, because nobody's happy. Everybody's, suffering from it. And
don't feel bad for the don't feel bad for the owners. Like, the poor owners, they have such a hard time managing their slaves.
Well, that was one of their things. That's, I think, one of the ways they justify it is, they're like, these people, they're angry, they're drunks, they abuse their families, and so it's not this clear good guy, bad guy. And that's why I think Tim going into it is like, there's a whole discipleship process on both sides that needs to happen. And
I love that.
Yeah, and so that's why he wants to buy a factory, because he wants to show the industry a new way to do it, that you can be profitable, that you can make great bricks, that you can provide for your workers. And
I love this.
The idea, I think, is once you start this project and you're running a brick factory, everybody's talking about it. Hey, did you hear that?
Right.
American guy that
Yeah.
went and he thinks he's going to figure this out. And,
Yeah.
it's a big gamble. And he's not the only one. I met one other guy through social media that is doing something kind of similar. And so I don't know, it feels like it's one of those things that it's going to become a movement, and one person is going to give the next person courage. And then, in 10 years, they'll look back and be like, whoa, we really did bring reformation. The government finally started enforcing the laws. People found that there's actual economic incentives to not do it the old way. And then all of a sudden you've got reformation.
Wow. Yeah, I love this approach and perspective. Like, you're not just, what's the way of saying it? Like, you're not just plugging the holes. You're kind of like taking a wider view and being like, what's the whole system? I like the nuance too, to say, like, because obviously social media is very polarizing and black and white. So like, slave, automatically a good guy, slave owner, automatically a bad guy. And you're like, there's this nuance here where, like you're saying, there's, maybe a guy didn't provide for his family, had to take out loans of debt because he was a drunk, or because he was these other things, or he didn't steward the work he did have before that good, and that's why he went into debt. And so I think it's really great for people to hear that nuance where, and same for the slave owner, like, he doesn't know another way. This is just how he was raised, and it's not right. It's not justifying it, but it's, so I'm curious, what does it take to buy a brick factory?
Yeah.
Is it $1 million, $10 million?
That's what Tim is trying to figure out.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in negotiations. Yes, it's definitely millions of dollars to buy. And, because it's a huge plot of land, it's future business revenue, it's equipment, trucks, obviously the laborers are part of it. There's, it's a whole network. It's as sophisticated as any big industry.
Yeah.
That would run in America. And so it was very eye-opening to get there and see the operation and meet the teams. It was all of my like conceptions of what it was going to be like kind of blew up by the end of day 2. And I was like, man, this is, I was like, Tim, like, what have you gotten yourself into? This is going to be so hard. And, I'm sure it's like any big project, he's going to look back in 10 years. He's like, oh, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I never would have said yes. But he's got that vision and calling from God. He's like, I know I have to do this, and it is going to be super hard. And I don't know all the steps, but the support and outpouring, like people stepping up and saying, hey, I've got studies that I've done on this. I've got brick machines. I've got, finances, and just people are coming around him and saying, like, I want to do my part, which is very cool.
I think what's really cool about it is, I think what you're doing is bringing mass awareness to it, which is one thing, because I do think it's very under wraps, right? Like this, and I feel like all of the missions field is. For us, that's why we're making a film about it, because I was like, how was I a minister? I was a campus pastor in LA for 10 years, and I never knew about all these other things kind of going on in the world. Like, you get so isolated, and you're like, man, there's a much bigger picture here. You kind of almost miss it. And awareness is the first step to change. And so I think it's cool. And I think a big part of it is, it's like, it's not a heart issue. It's just a knowledge issue, right?
Yeah.
People just don't really have that awareness. And now you're bringing it, and people are like, man, I don't want to see people in slavery. And so they can rally behind it, which I think is so cool.
One of the things I can say that I found interesting in at least the fundraising process, because my personal experience, I was like, okay, there's so much nuance and complexity here. But when you're fundraising, you've got these like 30-second reels. I'm like, you can't convey that. And I find myself like, I'm just like putting on my marketing hat. And, in some ways I am making good guy, bad guy content. So I'm glad to be able to do stuff like this, longer conversations where people can understand, it's not just this. Because that was one of my things in college. I thought, it's so easy to change the world. You start a nonprofit, you raise money, you just send it over there. Have a program, it'll be all fixed. And that was one of my big learning curves in my time in YWAM, I realized, oh, programs don't fix the world, relationships do. And so that's why I feel so excited about Tim and his project, because I realize I'm not investing in a good idea. I'm investing in Tim and Ashley, who I know you put them in a community, you put them in front of people, and the love and the service and the grit and fortitude that they're going to have. It's, maybe they don't have the perfect answer about how to solve the crisis, but based on who they are and the love that they're going to put into it, I'm like, that's what I'm investing in.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a quote I saw from Hudson Taylor that said, I found there are 3 stages to every great work of God. Mm-hmm. First, it's impossible. Then it's hard. Then it's done.
Yeah.
And it's like, at face value, it's like, how do we buy a brick farm in Pakistan? And then you're like, okay, it's slowly we begin to understand and map out the business plan and the reality, and you just slowly kind of it comes to shape, right? And yeah,
that's how I felt with the fundraising when I signed up to raise 110,000. I was like, gosh, I have no idea how to do this, and I did my first 2 posts, and I just thought, this is going to be a long, hard road, and how in the world am I going am I going to have to do tons of phone calls and meetings and travel and go speak at churches?
Yeah.
And then that third reel blew up, and all of a sudden it was like unbelievable support and generosity.
Yeah.
And, I remember the first $5,000 gift that came in from one of my friends that did YWAM, and I just thought, whoa, this is powerful to see people respond. It's been very cool.
Yeah, man, I love what you guys are doing. It's why I was like, I'm sure your Instagram inbox has like an insane amount of just blowing up where you can't even manage it. It kind of becomes unmanageable. But I was so curious and just hearing a little bit more about what some of those realities are and what's the process. And so it's cool to hear that just in a longer form, because like you say, it is sometimes hard. Like, man, but in saying that, with your short form content, you have pulled in a lot of engagement from people who can really get behind something meaningful, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you have anything else you wanted to share before we close out? I mean, if there's anything else, I mean, we'll put up the link to commission coaching and to your stuff, to give to.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would just challenge people, in my own mind, I was like, okay, I know I have money in savings, and there's good purpose for it, my future family and things like that. But I think, holy cow, am I going to save up this money? My life is already so comfortable and great and beautiful. There's a family over there waking up every day for the rest of their life, and all they have to do is 1,000 bricks, 1,000 bricks, 1,000 bricks. And they have kids, and they're waking up every morning, and what kind of life in existence? And I just think, hold on, how can I continue to, live the life that I live, upgrade my iPhone, without taking a second and just saying, holy cow, I can't forget those people that are living like that. And not to say I have to be like their whole solution, but I can definitely do something. I can definitely get there and donate. And it will mean for generations that I am impacting their family and changing their lives. And so I think if anyone's listening and that hits their heart, there is no greater joy than to pour out your finances for something that's so life-changing to a family. And so I would challenge to give an amount that feels a little bit scary.
I agree, man. I think these days there's like this compassion fatigue, right? It's like, there's plastics in the ocean, and there's Save the Whales, and there's a bunch of things. Like, this is not that, right? This is humanity. It's people's lives that we're talking about, that you can change for a fraction of your income, right? What's the average cost? $2,500. And somebody might be like, well, that's so expensive. And you're like, the amount that we just spend, and you go look up how much you spend in your Amazon cart in the past year, this is, man, this sacrifice is so worth it. Like, what else is more important than setting captives free, right? You change the whole course of their life. And then people say, oh, it's, what is it? Savior complex. And we're like, man, Jesus saved them, but we're the hands and feet. Like, we can be a part of this together and be a part of the solution and put your money towards something that's that has a lasting impact, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for anybody listening, man, take the extra 5 seconds right after this, click the link below in this episode and go follow him on Instagram, John Mark Dyer, and give to this, because it's meaningful. He's almost raised this first amount, but I'm sure there's more to come. They're going to try to buy a brick factory out there as well. So there's going to be a lot to give to set captives free from slavery and change the course of people's lives. So, man, John, Mark, I am so happy that you just came on and shared with us more about that. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.